at 4 on Fox. Baltimore still favored, now only by a point. Here's Micah on how the Cowboys are trying to avoid 3 straight home losses.
To have back-to-back embarrassing losses at home, like, man, I get the fan frustration, but I don't think there's anyone more frustrated than me. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm a competitor at the end of the day. Like, I feel like I'm a warrior. Like, I battle like everyone else battle, but at the end of the day, like, it's all about wanting it more. And to me, not having everyone want it as bad as you do, that kind of hurts the most, you know? I think I'll find it tougher if, people don't step up. I think that's the tougher to, like, damn, like, this is the mentality, this is the movement of this team. So to me, it's like a prove-it weekend.
Okay. Brew, what can Dallas prove with a win?
He's right. It's a prove-it weekend. I know the narrative out there is, the Cowboys can't show you anything in the regular season. It's all about the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Partially true. The only team, Nick, that can play mediocre football throughout the regular season and we won't write them off as a contender is obviously the Chiefs.
And by the way, I'm not even sure that's true.
Well, last year that was the case.
No, last year they were written off repeatedly. So we don't have to talk Chiefs now. Last year they were written off repeatedly. People said the Browns, I don't think there's any team actually that can be mediocre all year and not have people doubt them. If there is one, it's the Chiefs, but even the Chiefs last year were.
I agree. Last year they were written off, but because they won this year, really, if they're 10-7, nobody's thinking, they don't have a chance. But anyway, back to Dallas. Yeah, they have a lot to prove. Because, like I said, we'll judge them based on how they play in the regular season. If they beat Baltimore with the reigning MVP, and the Ravens are absolutely desperate. They have got to get this win. Lamar Jackson, by the way, 20-3 against the NFC. All right? And if they are able to beat this team, then this, Nick, will be the biggest regular season win of Mike McCarthy's Dallas tenure. And you look back, you'll see. Because they beat Philly a couple years ago at the end of the season to win the division. Yeah. But remember, Philly had Gardner Minshew playing quarterback. Jalen Hurts was out. They beat Cincinnati the same year early in the season, but it was week 2. When we know the Bengals aren't that good.
And also that was Cooper Rush. That wasn't even with Dak.
That beat because Dak was hurt. Yeah, right. So if you really look through the games, this would be the biggest win in the Mike McCarthy era. And you could go back a few years probably before that. So this may be their biggest win in 7-8 years, maybe a decade if they get it done. So, yeah, there's a lot. What they'll prove too, Nick, is that last week, which I think you already believe.
Was a fluke.
Last week was their Arizona game last year. Remember, they only lost, 2 touchdowns. But it was Josh Dobbs playing quarterback for the Cardinals. So if they bounce back this week with this win, we'll just be like, hey, they had a hiccup. They're still the 12.
Hiccup, to me, is the better word. I said fluke, and I immediately wanted to pull it back. Fluke seems too dismissive. But that last week was a hiccup if they win this week. Here's the other thing, and I don't know that you'll like or agree with this, but you might if it comes to pass. They win this week, they will, to me, prove they are clearly the team to beat in the NFC East. That they are that.
You think for sure?
Yeah.
Because, the Eagles, let's see what they do.
Yeah, the Eagles, weekend. By the way, play the Saints this weekend, and they're underdogs. I just think this would resonate more. And I think that the Cowboys, up to this point in the season, I can't say they've been more impressive than the Eagles. They both have a bad loss, different types of bad loss. Cowboys getting run off the field, and the Eagles blowing a game they shouldn't have lost. The other thing is, I feel like they will be starting to build a resume that goes a bit in the face of your tomato can stuff. Because while it is true that the Cowboys, they add to their stats, they get gaudy numbers, they add to their point differential, and they blow out the bad teams, which maybe makes them look more formidable than they actually are. Since McCarthy's been there, since they've been winning 12 games, I went through it, every year they win 4 or 5 games against playoff teams or teams that, were above 500, just missed out. Last year, when you always say that they just beat up on tomato cans, they beat the Rams, who went to the playoffs. They beat Seattle, who was above 500.
That was a controversy.
They didn't make the playoffs.
Seattle was above 500. They beat Philadelphia. They beat Detroit, and we pretend they didn't. All right, the year before, They beat Cincinnati, as you mentioned. They beat a 13-win Minnesota team. They beat the Giants twice, who went to the playoffs and won a playoff game. They beat Philadelphia. They beat Tampa Bay in the playoffs after losing to them in the regular season. The year before that, they beat the Chargers, the Eagles, the Patriots, who were a playoff team, and New Orleans, who were all above 500.
Mac Jones, Patriots.
Again, I'm just saying those aren't, I'm not saying they're amazing teams, but I don't know that Baltimore's an amazing team. And so I think that it is true that the Cowboys look like a world beater typically against the dregs of the league. And it makes Dak's numbers better, their point differential better, all of that. But there aren't a lot of teams that have 4+ wins against good teams year over year. And so the Cowboys will be building that resume, because I don't know what Cleveland's going to end up being. I'm more skeptical of Cleveland than Vegas is than a lot of people are, but they dominated that game. They lost to New Orleans. And one other thing that I just want to throw at you real quick, because I think if they win, it's not going to be because this is the Rico Dowdle breakout game. They're going to have to beat the Ravens. Like the Chiefs, Rashee Rice, 8. The Raiders, Devontae Adams, 8. CeeDee Lamb is better than either of those players. Devontae is an all-time great, but he's better than him at this point. I think if they beat the Ravens, Dak to CeeDee is going to have a big game. And if they have a big game, I'm hard-pressed right now to find a more lethal quarterback-wide receiver connection than those two. Like Jamar Chase is not really gotten off the ground yet this year.
But you would take, given the choice, you would definitely take Burrow and Chase. You're saying based on these first two games.
And last season, where it was the most dynamic connection in the league, like it's the.
Based on last year. Burrow was hurt.
Right, but
if you were given the choice and Burrow's going to be healthy, you can have Burrow and Chase.
No, yes, okay. I would, but I'm saying as far as most prolific, most effective, it'd be we'd be going on the second season of that being the case.
Yeah.
What are you
smiling? Yeah, 2 and 2
one.
Purdy and Ayuk are about to get rolling.
Okay. Well, don't sleep on Darnold and Justin Jefferson just because it's so far.
I'm sleeping.
So far
I'm snoozing. I'm letting you know. I'm snoozing.
Unwise. All right.
Before we didn't say Derek Carr and Rashid Shaheed.
Not bad, though.
Yeah.
Before we move on,
he got speed.
I thought there's one thing or a few things that Micah has been sounding the alarm on, hit my vibes meter really quick, because I feel like, and it's something Mangini said, and it was a lot of the narrative discourse post-Saints, like, you know what? New defensive coordinator, they find a wrinkle, you don't have a bunch of plays to draw on. Remember 3 years ago, like Mangini said, on his podcast, which I know you're a huge fan of, he talked about effort and about not wanting it more. So I say one time kind of just slip of the lip, like slip of the tongue, like, effort. But then it feels like he's really hammering it home. We did not try as hard. We didn't meet the moment. So that hit alarm bells.
I don't love that. I think you say that in the locker room. You say that in the locker room. It's great for us. We are the media, and we can talk about it. But I don't think you need to publicly go out there and say, because the way he said it was like, guys don't want it. Some guys don't want it as much as I do.
Yeah.
That's what he said. And even if that's true, I don't know that it's true, but even if it is, say that in the locker room to your guys.
Everybody.
If you say it out public, now it becomes fodder, and it can make dissension in the locker room. So it's just,
I don't think there's a lot of stuff just for the locker room with the Cowboys. For good or for bad? Because
Jerry
bad job by me for forgetting the safety's name. But the Cowboys safety that was like, Micah's podcast, what are you focused on? That wasn't in the, it wasn't just in the locker room. And then Micah responded.
Right, there you go.
You know what I mean? And so I think they're, for good or for bad, kind of an open book. At least it wasn't on his podcast.
For bad.
It was in a regular media setup. Yeah.
On the other side of the ball, the winless Ravens. A loss would put them into a hole that few teams have dug out of. Here's the stat. Only 6 0-3 teams have made the playoffs since the moon landing.
Wow. In the Super Bowl era.
Moon landing. Can you give us a year?
Since
I know it because I was a really good student.
1969. Since you were 1 year old, I looked it up on Wikipedia. Take a listen to Lamar.
We're not moping around. Like, even though we lost, like I said, we're starting the season off slow. Our guys not like doubting each other. Like, oh man, is this the reason we losing or this and that? It's like, man, we got to go out there and get it. You know, we got to make the fan base happy, got to make ourselves happy. But it starts in practice.
Okay. Baltimore season over with a loss, bro.
Remind the audience, and I'm not trolling, but this is it gives extra resonance to Brew's pick, or to Brew's opinion. This is Brew's Super Bowl champion pick.
I wore this for a reason. This answer your question?